And now we've got some breaking news now for you, fresh off the press, exclusively for GB News. Nigel Farage has broken his silence and responded to the Prime Minister as he's been accused of cronyism after publishing his list of 25 new peers for the House of Lords. Nigel Farage has just blasted out. Here's the exclusive video.
So Sir Keir Starmer, always critical of the House of Lords, and in particular the number of peers being put in by previous Tory governments, has now decided to put 25 of his own cronies in the House of Lords, and they're people who worked in number 10 for him, for Rachel Reeves, members of the far left Fabian Society, and they've all been rewarded for their loyalty. Add to that a handful of Lib Dems and quite a few Tories as well, and you now realise that every party in British politics has representation in the House of Lords, apart from one, and that's the one that has led the opinion polls for the last 150 polls in the row. Do you know what the name is? I'll tell you. It's called Reform UK. Now, I wrote to the Prime Minister 3 months ago to say, look, come on, we need some form of representation in the upper house. I didn't even get the courtesy of a reply. Normal relations between parties don't exist when it comes to reform. And frankly, this Prime Minister, who I used to think was a decent bloke, but perhaps just a bit wishy-washy, I now think he is part of a political establishment determined to crush dissent, determined to crush free speech, and to make sure that reform does not get a fair crack of the whip. And you know what? I'm so annoyed. This makes me even more determined to absolutely do it. General election.
Well, that was the video there. Just to go over the top line there, Nigel Farage blasting back at 25 Labour cronies, as he called them, being crammed into the House of Lords, members of the far left Fabian Society. He said everybody had representation in this list apart from one, and that's the Reform Party, who's led in every one of the past 150 opinion polls. Nigel Farage went on to continue, I wrote to the Prime Minister, I didn't even get the courtesy of a reply, and then he really dug in. He said, frankly, this Prime Minister, I believe, is part of an establishment that is determined to crush dissent, determined to crush free speech, and repeated what he said last night on social media, now makes him more determined than ever before to smash the political establishment. It's fair to say the gloves have firmly come off. I'm joined in the studio by our political editor, Chris Hope.
This video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Protect yourself this Christmas with one of the best VPNs out there. Cybercriminals are out to get your bank account information while you do your Christmas shopping online. But you can protect your privacy, money, and identity now with ExpressVPN for as little as 8 pence a day. Click the link now to claim up to 75% off.
Chris Hope, we just heard that in real time. That's hot off the press, an exclusive on the show today. Nigel Farage doubling down and really going for the throat there, calling for the Prime Minister, saying as part of an establishment to crush dissent, to crush free speech.
Well, he's helped by the fact he has not got a single peer apart from Malcolm Offord, who's leaving shortly to fight the May elections in the House of Lords. How can he possibly deliver on his potential winning power in 2029? He says there they are determined to crush dissent, free speech. He's aligning himself against what he calls the establishment, which is what he would try and do. He's led for 150 polls in a row. But Nigel Farage knows this. He's got fewer MPs in Parliament than there are MPs called Josh. He's just got 6 MPs now. I think there are 7 Joshes I've counted. I mean, he's a tiny party. Yes, he's doing well in the polls, 150 polls in a row, but he hasn't got enough really to justify what he's claiming. And it does create, I think, a constitutional crisis potentially. If he wins suddenly power with loads of MPs, how will the second chamber do what he wishes? I think, frankly, the independent MP peers must step up and deliver his manifesto under the Salisbury Convention. That's how I can see the way forward for him. But he's right to be cross. He didn't even get the polite response from Keir Starmer. He did start out, Martin, as someone who wanted to work with Keir Starmer. He offered to support about getting close to Donald Trump. He spoke to him in the House of Commons. I remember seeing the the footage. It hasn't happened. The reply hasn't come. He's angry, and the gloves are off.
He said there, I started out by thinking Keir Starmer was a decent chap.
Yeah, he did.
A bit wishy-washy, but he's come to a different conclusion now. Part of an establishment to crush dissent. You mentioned the word Josh there. It would be no joshing matter if Reform UK were to win. There's a long way to go. But if they were to win and the upper chamber, the Lords, was crammed full of people, for example, who would vote things down, such as leaving the ECHR. You've only got to look at the metrics now to see in 4 years' time there could be enough Labourites plus Lib Dems to simply grind government to a halt.
Plus some Tories. I mean, I think, you haven't got enough non-aligned peers to have that majority, even if they were all on the side of reform. A Labour source tells GB News that the Tories stuffed the House of Lords with their own supporters, creating a serious imbalance that has allowed them to frustrate their plans to make working families better off. Nigel Farage started his party, and I was there when it started, and it was called Brexit Party, became a Reform Party, as a PR party to reform how we vote in MPs, because he was so annoyed about the fact that he had a single 2 or 3 MPs from winning 3 million votes in 2015. He has slightly gone quiet on PR. He knows if you get in on the first past the post, no one wants to rip up the system. It's in your favour. This is politics, Martin, in the raw. Labour taking advantage of their majority last year.
And the gloves firmly just came off once again. Thank you, Chris. So bring my next guest in now. It's the former Labour Culture Secretary, Sir Ben Bradshaw. Sir Ben, welcome to the show. You may have heard Nigel Farage there blasting back, saying that, frankly, this Prime Minister is part of an establishment that sets out to crush dissent, to crush free speech. Clearly, Nigel Farage furious that he feels that the Lords will be crammed full of people to try and stop him from governing.
It's certainly giving the impression that he's furious. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction, if I may say so. I think what the move yesterday was about was this government, this elected government, trying to get its business through. As you will know, Martin, the Lords have been holding up a whole series of important bills that were in Labour's manifesto, from workers' rights to House of Lords reform itself. And this change yesterday still leaves Labour much, much smaller than the Tories in the House of Lords, and it doesn't give the government a majority. So it still has a problem. If Nigel Farage wins a majority at the next election, as Christopher Hope's just said, he can use the Parliament Act if he wants to put any legislation through. A British Prime Minister with a majority behind him in the House of Commons can pretty much do anything he or she wants. He could also abolish the House of Lords if that's what he wants to do. But I think he's reading too much into this. I mean, I think there is an argument for reform having its fair share of peers, depending on how many MPs it's got. But as Christopher was reminding us, it still only has a very few number of MPs. So it would have been rather odd, I think, for the Prime Minister to give reform a greater number than their parliamentary number would normally give them.
So, Ben, the thing that gets people's goats really, really badly, it really sticks in their core about politics, is that politicians say one thing in opposition and do the precise opposite the moment they get into power. You got Sir Keir Starmer there banging on about abolishing the House of Lords in December 22, banging on about Tory cronies at PMQs in 2023, and now he's stuffing the chamber full of his own cronies. Isn't this the point? It's like politics just seems to be so self-serving and everything's set out just to stuff your opponent.
Well, to be fair, Martin, the clip you played earlier of the Prime Minister was from 2 years before the general election, and Labour manifesto didn't say it was going to abolish the House of Lords. It said it was going to do what it's doing, which is getting rid of the hereditaries, making it a more balanced chamber across the regions and nations of the country, limiting term times and limiting an age limit. Those reforms are all going through. It also said, once those reforms are through, and don't forget the Lords and the Tories have battled these changes all the way, the government's also said it will then go on to second stage reform. I would like to see a fully elected second chamber. I think that's the only defensible second chamber to have in a democracy. But, we have to wait and see. I hope the government goes forward with its second stage of Lords reform. But you have to be very careful about going based on what the Labour manifesto was, rather than an interview that was done 2 years before the election.
So, Ben Bradshaw, I know it's approaching the 12 days of Christmas and we're all talking about Lords are leaping. But are we seriously going to be getting to a stage where Nigel Farage is going to cram the House of Lords full of hundreds of his own reform laws just to balance the books? And doesn't it make the whole thing seem like a bit of a farce?
Well, we're talking about quite a lot of hypotheticals there, Martin. I mean, if Reform win the next election, there would be a number of ways in which he could get his business through. He could abolish the House of Lords, he could fill it with peers, but that would be slightly against what he said about wanting to reform the House of Lords. But as I said earlier, there's nothing to stop an elected Prime Minister with the majority in the House of Commons in this country doing whatever they want. So I think the idea that the current constitution of the Lords, which doesn't give this government a majority, would stop Mr. Farage doing what he wants to do, I think is a slight over-exaggeration.
OK, well, the gloves are firmly off, and not for the first time. Thanks for your company. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
That's the former Labour Culture Secretary, Sir Ben Bradshaw. Thank you very, very much indeed.